The reason we're here today is kind of two reasons. We're celebrating 3 years of helping young moms with breast cancer. And I have to credit the idea to Facebook, because Facebook brought up on my newsfeed, this is what you were doing 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, I think some people are here, we met in here for a yoga event. And that was the very first time that we introduced Genevieve's Helping Hands to the world. And it was the start of everything. So I know a couple people here, right? I'm looking for some faces that were here that very first day. The other reason we're celebrating, we thought, wouldn't it be great to get a proclamation from the governor's office? And I have to credit Mrs. Cooper, who came across once again in my newsfeed, that she had read a proclamation from Metavirus, which is an organization for women who were metastatic breast cancer. So I kind of called the office and I got a hold of Cheryl Waters, who I want to give credit to. She says, well, Ann, why don't you to get a proclamation? And I went online and we got the proclamation. So we figured this was a great way to commemorate it. And I picked today because it would have been Genevieve's 39th birthday. So what greater day to pick, right? And it's also the day before Elise's 8th birthday. So,
and I'm speaking on behalf of the Foundation of First Health, the Cancer Care Fund, and the Clara McLean House. So after about 12 years of planning this wonderful hospitality house for the families and patients of those that are receiving treatment at First Health of the Carolinas, Genevieve was one of our first guests, and we welcomed her about 5 years ago. And for me, after all the years of planning, Genevieve was the first person that really made me understand the magnitude of what we were about ready to embark upon, which was to create this safe and wonderfully restful place and a loving environment for people in dire medical situations. And it includes not only the overnight accommodations, but we have so many groups of support here and special programs for oncology patients. And it's a place where individuals in this community can actually access our own Foundation of First Health Cancer Care Fund. So Genevieve inspired a support group for young cancer patients at Clara McLean House. She, after she had stayed here, it was perhaps about a year later, and she said, you know, when I'm strong enough, I really want to do something. And she said that she felt that was so important, that the needs of younger people with cancer are unique. And so she inspired that, and she has a lasting impact to this day. The importance of being able to recover at Clara's house has now translated into the recovery grants for many other young women to have the same opportunity through this charity that was established in her name.
In my role in the governor's office of public engagement, sometimes I get to hear from North Carolinians in all walks of life. Occasionally, they have stories of ways they've overcome obstacles and faced tragedy with grace. That was certainly true in hearing from the Rickmeyer family and Genevieve's Helping Hands. Your work and Genevieve's story are inspiring to me, and I know to the governor as well. So it's my honor to read this proclamation on behalf of the governor, with the goal of increasing awareness about the unique and heartbreaking challenges for young mothers and their families as they face breast cancer. So here's the proclamation. Young Mothers with Breast Cancer Awareness Day 2017 by the Governor of the State of North Carolina, a proclamation. Whereas, young mothers with breast cancer are an often overlooked and underserved group of breast cancer patients. And whereas, a diagnosis of breast cancer can be devastating to any woman, but is most unexpectedly and unusually challenging to young mothers and their families whose unique medical, social, emotional, and financial needs frequently go unrecognized by the medical and social services in charge of their care. And whereas, young women who develop breast cancer have their initial symptoms or frequently ignored or explained away, so that when they are officially diagnosed, it is often at the advanced 3rd or 4th stages. And whereas, young mothers attempting to manage the emotional and physical toil that accompany the symptoms and treatment of breast cancer require special consideration and support as they navigate the impact of their illness on themselves as well as their children and families. And whereas Genevieve's Helping Hands, Inc., a 501c3, was established to meet the needs of young mothers with breast cancer in the name of Genevieve Sonia, who died of breast cancer just before August 18, 2013, her 35th birthday. This organization promotes healthy living in 5 areas: faith, family, friends, food, and fitness, and provides small stay grants that can enhance a young mother's recovery from treatment of any type of breast cancer that is first diagnosed at age 40 or younger. And whereas the state of North Carolina recognizes the need to create public awareness for young mothers with breast cancer and to generate support for organizations already working to alleviate the struggles they face. And whereas this Awareness Day brings attention to the extraordinary obstacles a young mother with breast cancer faces, fighting her disease while nurturing her children, and offers support to all young women and their families in this or a similar position. Now, therefore, I, Roy Cooper, Governor of the State of North Carolina, do hereby proclaim August 18, 2017 as Young Mothers with Breast Cancer Awareness Day in North Carolina, and commend its observance to all our citizens.
My name is Elise Hamilton Childress. I'm with the North Carolina Council for Women and Youth Involvement. We're under the Department of Administration that do work related to women's issues such as domestic and sexual violence and human trafficking. But our overall mission is to advance the status of women, girls, and families in North Carolina. So when we have the opportunity to extend support to community groups such as Genevieve's Helping Hands and learn more about what they're doing and how important issues such as young mothers with breast cancer are in our state, it's just really an honor and a privilege to get to embrace that part of our mission. Our awesome panel, I am going to ask that you each start by telling us a little bit about yourselves.
Hi, I'm Allison Smith. I'm from Durham, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer 4 years ago at age 36. At that time, my sons were ages 6 and 3, and my daughter was 1. I went through chemo, surgery, radiation over a 7-month period at UNC Lineberger, and I was at the time a stay-at-home mom and with no family in town, so we relied a lot on friends for meals, and our family came in from out of town during my chemo. But I am here because I was part of a Survivors Coalition support group that Katarina started in Chapel Hill. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm happy to be here today to speak about this important topic. My name is Katarina Gamitter. I am a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a friend, a wellness advocate, and a young breast cancer survivor. I actually had the opportunity to meet Genevieve at the YSC conference in New Orleans, and that was years ago after her initial diagnosis. And in my brief meeting and discussion with her, I could feel her positive energy and her strength, and it was a beautiful thing to walk away with, and I was very saddened to hear about her passing. At the age of 32, I was diagnosed with stage 2B triple negative breast cancer. My children at the time were 2.5, and my daughter was 4 months. I first felt the lump when my daughter was 2 weeks old, and it was dismissed by my OBGYN, which happens far too often with young women. That was not the first time breast cancer had entered my life. My mother was diagnosed at 43, and she passed away from the disease at 48. So in my life I have seen from early stages to metastatic breast cancer and the devastating impact that it does have on families, and the difficulties that it does present for mothers and their children as well. Following my diagnosis, I had a bilateral mastectomy, 5 months of chemo. I was on a trial drug for 6 months, and then I had my ovaries out due to my BRCA status. I carry the BRCA1 mutation, So I was trying to stay one step ahead of ovarian cancer. Unfortunately, both my sisters also tested positive for the gene. My one sister had prophylactic mastectomy and oophorectomy. My younger sister was diagnosed at age 31 with breast cancer 3 months after her wedding, and she is now trying to have a child, so is dealing with the other end of breast cancer, of infertility, and dealing with pregnancy issues post-cancer. During treatment, I had a traveling husband, 2 children, was running a household, I had 2 crazy dogs, and it was getting through each day. How can I get through the day? Sometimes how can I get through the hour? How can I get through the minute? Keeping it together while trying to keep my family together and raising my children. I was breastfeeding up until I had to stop, so that part was very, very difficult as well. What got me through treatment was support and help from family and friends, and I think it is a beautiful mission that Genevieve's Helping Hands has in helping women recover and in helping women just get through the mission with support, because ultimately that's what we all need. I am a state leader for Young Survival Coalition. Young Survival Coalition was started by 3 young women in the mid-1990s, and they were all diagnosed with breast cancer under the age of 35, and they wanted to make sure that no young woman faced breast cancer alone, and they continue that mission today through resources and education and support. They are a national organization and international as well, and there is a conference where I had met Genevieve that does take place every year, and they have a very active website, and we have local groups throughout the state that meet as well. And just some facts about young women, breast cancer from YSC. There are more than 250,000 women living in the US today who are diagnosed with breast cancer before their 41st birthday. Some of the major areas of struggle with young women and young moms and breast cancer is raising small children, keeping their families together, having jobs, needing to work to keep medical care, relationships and dating challenges, body image, intimacy issues, overall wellness, mental health, anxiety, depression, and working through those things as well. So YSC works to educate, empower, and advocate for all young women diagnosed with breast cancer, so no one feels alone. I feel very grateful for my local support group as well. Navigating parenting challenges with a breast cancer diagnosis can be very difficult.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Mary Beth Bell. I'm the project director for the Carolina Breast Cancer Study. This is a population-based study of breast cancer in women in North Carolina who live in 44 counties in our state. The study began in 1992 in 24 counties in North Carolina. The initial purpose of the study, and it still continues, is to try to answer the simple question, why do women diagnosed with the same type of breast cancer who receive the same type of treatment have different outcomes? And so the first 2 phases of the study enrolled about 4,000 women, and there was a biologic component to the study, and still is, and samples of the tumor from the diagnostic surgeries have been diagnosed and analyzed, and this is the study that found out early on in the 1990s that breast cancer was not just one disease, but there are subtypes of breast cancer. So looking at the subtypes, it helps the doctors to figure out what treatments are going to work best. And they work for many years now to perfect that, and we are getting more and more treatment-based information from our researchers in the scientific end. My role in the study is to collect information from the women in the study. 3,000 women were all interviewed in their homes between 2008 and 2013 in this 3rd phase of the study that I'm involved with. They completed a long survey talking about risk factors for breast cancer. They provided consents for us to get their medical records and to get the tumor blocks. They were given incentive to participate, and 3,000 women did participate between 2008 and 2013, and much of that was thanks to Sarah Williams, who was our recruiter at the time. Thanks, Sarah. We are interviewing these women every year now to collect more information about the treatments that they're getting, as well as the outcomes that they're having with regard to these treatments. And we've completed data collection on women up to 4 years past their diagnosis, and we're collecting data on them at 6 years, 7 years, and then we'll do it again at 9 years, and if we have enough funding, we hope to get it through 10 years of follow-up. The researchers are at UNC. Dr. Andy Olshan is the principal investigator. Shelley Erb is also a principal investigator, as is Melissa Troster. And those are the folks who have been working hard on phase 3 of the study. Back in '92, when the study began, Dr. Bob Milliken was the investigator of the study, and he spent his life devoted to breast cancer research. He passed away in 2012, and we are all working hard to live up to his legacy. Over 100 publications have come about as a result of the data that's been collected thus far from the study. And I have dropped off a little handout about the study at everybody's seat, as well as a bookmark, and we shared this bookmark with all the study participants when we met with them in their homes. There's also quite a few breast cancer resource directories roaming around out there at the tables. I didn't have enough for everybody. This directory was something that was created in response to the women who way back in 1992, 93, 94, who were the initial study members, asked about resources for breast cancer. So the book was created back in the early 90s, and then the 4th edition with our efforts was put together in 2007, 2008, 2009, right around that time. This is probably going to be the last printed version of this document because, once something's printed, it becomes obsolete. And so while it's beautiful and the information in here just keeps changing as far as where the resources are. It's a county by county resource. The articles, however, are still relevant, and the book itself has a lot to offer. So that's why I brought copies of it for folks to please feel free to take home. What else can I tell you? The study, the 3rd phase of the study was named for Jeannie Hopkins Lucas, and she was a strong advocate for breast cancer research. She had her treatment at UNC. She was also the first African American female North Carolina senator, and she unfortunately died of breast cancer at the age of 71 in March 2007. Her husband allowed us to use her likeness and her story to share with folks about the study. And this phase of the study is also regarding racial differences in breast cancer. So we have this large component where we enrolled half African American and half non-African American, mostly white women, into this phase of the study so that we could look at the differences in treatment and in access to care and in outcomes for those women. So I think that's enough for me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Shaw, and I also work for the Carolina Breast Cancer Study. I've been there a little less than a year, came up October of last year, and actually, I don't want to say I'm taking Sarah's place, but I am attempting to follow in her steps, and they still ask about how Sarah is, and they definitely miss talking to Sarah, but my role is to talk with, do the surveys over the phone with women, and I consider it a privilege to talk with so many women about their breast cancer experiences. Many of them are young mothers with young children, so it definitely is an honor. I was very excited to be able to work for the study because I also am a breast cancer survivor, ×2. My first diagnosis was when I was 45 years old. And at the time, my children, I have 2 boys. One was in 6th grade and one was in 8th grade. And I was stage 1 breast cancer, had a lumpectomy, chemotherapy and radiation in 2008. I was a part-time nurse at the time, And my husband we run our own, his own architecture business. And so that had its own challenges, running your own business, dealing with an illness. And then again in 2014 had a second new breast primary. So, and I also have a very good friend, Jessica, who just went through as a young mom, 36 years old. So I've been asking her experiences and what were her challenges as her children were younger than mine were and she's still going through the treatment. So I have her perspective as well.
How do issues with children and childcare affect treatment for a young mother with breast cancer?
My kids were 6, 3, and 1 when I was diagnosed, and so I was a stay-at-home mom, and my oldest, he was in 1st grade, so he was in school all day, but my younger 2 were at home full-time. So we definitely relied on friends and family to help, or my husband would take off work to stay home, and I would go to appointments by myself. By the time I got to radiation, which was my last phase of treatment, I just went by myself. Because we could schedule it in the afternoon where I could hand the kids off to my husband, and so there was a lot of juggling that I had to do, and I think it certainly takes an emotional toll, because I feel like at age 36 with 3 kids, 6 and under, I just felt like I was in the prime of my caretaking role in life, and I wasn't able to take care of my family, and that was hard. I also felt like each kid has their own, like, I mean, my 3 and 1 year old really didn't understand what was going on, but my 6-year-old, I talked to a therapist just because I didn't want to do anything to make this even worse for him, because I knew there was something about it that was hard for him, but I didn't know how much he understood. So I think it's managing logistics is hard, and I think then just trying to also, while you're trying to take care of yourself, try to figure out, make sure that everybody else is okay too. So it's hard to let go of that as a mom.
At the time, my daughter was at me, and I could not lift her up. I could not hold her, I could not carry her, I could not feed her. I also had to switch from breastfeeding exclusively to giving my stubborn 4-month-old daughter a bottle, which she wanted no part of. So we also went through a 3-day hunger strike by her, which was very hard emotionally on me, but we got through it, as she had to eat eventually. That was probably the hardest part for me at the time, was not being able to hold my daughter because of the pain involved with the surgery. But my sisters helped me, and they basically would split up the week. My husband worked when he could, or would also take me to appointments. And for chemo, he was always with me. I think the hardest part is, as well, that Allison touched on, was almost feeling guilty. This was my role as a stay-at-home mom, and I could not complete that goal. I couldn't take care of my kids. I needed help. I needed help. I was very independent and did everything that I could. And then that I had to switch from, the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. I think that my cup was beyond empty, and there were days where I couldn't get out of bed. So I think having children that weren't in school was very challenging, and we got through the best we could. I wouldn't say it was always a healthy way to get through things, but I do think that it poses real issues, especially for women that do need to work as well. How to manage getting to treatment and having those issues covered. The other part of it is when I did have my children with me, was just not feeling well. It was always difficult to be with them, but not to fully be with them, or not to be mindful in their presence, and to have a lot going on emotionally while I was spending time with them as well. It was another great challenge with a child.
This is a great question, and unfortunately it's not one we asked in the Carolina breast cancer study. The researchers didn't have very many questions at all about issues facing young moms. So I combed the data to figure out what I could come up with, and what I did find was that we did ask a question, and the question was there ever a time when you wanted to go to a doctor but could not because of financial issues? Was there ever a time you wanted to go to a doctor but could not because of transportation issues? And of those 364 women who were young moms when they were diagnosed, 31% of them indicated there was a time they wanted to go to the doctor but could not because of financial issues. Another 15% indicated there was a time they wanted to go but could not because of transportation issues. We do have a mail-in survey that we're administering at the 7-year follow-up. It's 36 pages long, and I'm grateful that so many of the women are actually filling it out and sending it back in. And there are a lot of questions about financial toxicity, questions about worries about decisions made, questions about worrying about whether children are, whether their children are going to get breast cancer. So there's a lot of quality of life questions in that survey. The data is very new. We've only collected about 500 of those surveys at this point, and we haven't done any analysis yet. But that's a survey that I'm hoping will answer a few more questions. I also tried to find, when Sarah asked me for some statistics about the number of women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer who are mothers, and I wasn't able to find that on a statewide level, that information. So I'm not sure if anyone else knows where to look for that, but it would be interesting. I think we only have anecdotal information about the number of women with breast cancer who happen to be mothers, young moms, and it's a shame that we don't have more specific information about that.
I can answer this a little bit personally. As a family that had their own business, whenever my husband had to take off to help me, if he isn't working, he isn't getting paid. And so financially, it was a very large stress. And at first, I think some of you can relate, you get a lot of support at first from family and friends, and there's a big inrush of casseroles and help. But then as you continue to deal with it, people have to get back to their own lives, and you're kind of having to deal with it as a family. And I can remember my parents came at first. They live 3,000 miles away, so they came for several months. But they had to go back home, and the last chemo treatment that we had, I just have to tell you a humorous story. We went to the last chemo treatment, and as I'm walking in the door to my chemo chair, my son calls me and says, "Mom, I have spots all over my body." And I'm like, oh no. So he had just come down with chicken pox, which is not good when you're having chemo. And so he was quarantined in his room, I was quarantined in the guest room, and my husband, who's trying to work, is getting texts from both of us wanting food, water, whatever. And so that last piece of time was quite disruptive for him, because he was going a little crazy between the three of us, because actually the other boy also then came down with chickenpox. So we had about 4 weeks of quarantine in our house that was difficult to deal with. But also my friend Jessica, who was 36 when she was diagnosed, and she had small children, and so I asked her to let me know what her challenges were as a young mother. And her children were, her girl was 9 and Jacob was 11, and she was a single mom, and she again said financially it was very challenging. She didn't have insurance for 18 months. UNC did cover her with charity care during that time, and she said it impacted her tremendously. She also had her own business at a beauty salon, and so when she wasn't working, she wasn't getting paid. So they did do a GoFund site, which helped her to keep her house from donations to that GoFund site. But even now, she says it's still very challenging, even though she does have insurance, as a lot of times insurance doesn't cover things that you have to have because you had breast cancer. For instance, her shots for osteoporosis are not totally covered by insurance. She said emotionally it was very challenging for her children. She had an ex-husband who did not want her talking to her children about her diagnosis, which she didn't agree with. So of course there were some emotional struggles, and she dealt with depression after the treatment, and she is also still in treatment for with her reconstruction surgeries. She said with her children, the hardest thing was missing the many activities that she wanted to go to. That was very difficult, and I had that issue as well. So she said now when they do something fun, her daughter will say, well, this helps make up for the cancer time.
So in a perfect world, breast cancer wouldn't exist. It wouldn't even be something that is around. But in a world where it does exist, we have to cultivate the best resources and support possible. So I invite each of you to leave us with a little bit of inspiration for where we go from here. Answer this question as specifically as you can. In a sky is the limit world, blue sky world where anything is possible, what resources would exist to help you and other survivors face the many issues you have described?
This is very pie in the sky, but I would love if we have so many different kinds of clinics at our treatment centers, but if we had either a family resource center that was just sort of geared at helping people with transportation, childcare, and also identifying financial help, because I really do think that's hard for people to talk about. Even if you have insurance, the bills keep coming long after you finish treatment. So I think something like that that's very sort of, I know we have patient support center at UNC Lineberger, but if there was something in it or even a person that was specifically identified to be a family resource person, the other thing they could help provide referrals for is like counseling, because there's various, you might want your kids to go see a therapist, you might need to see a marital therapist, that sort of thing.
I think that navigators would be very helpful, as Allison stated, with a more specific purpose, very pie in the sky. But there are lactation consultants, and young women from our support group explain that in Europe, when you have a baby, that a nurse comes to your house and makes sure that you know how to take care of that baby. So mothers, really, we need another mother in our house. We need a duplicate self, but that can't happen. So if there was some sort of person or nurse that could come by and sort of just discuss those topics, that as a mother, what you need to do, financial, childcare, transportation, and just sort of help organize the assistance that is out there. I think that could be very useful. And also peer support. I think that as women connect with other women, we generally are connectors, to just help learn from other people's experiences. So if young mothers are paired with other young mothers that can help them through the process, I think that could be very helpful.
Be covered, whatever it was that you needed to do, you'd be covered for it, and you wouldn't have to hunt around and refile and lose insurance and get insurance. So if that financial piece could be removed, I think people could focus a little bit better on getting better.
I have two things, and it goes along with what everyone is saying. Jessica especially said the financial piece was just so overwhelming to her, and if it could just be covered 100%, how wonderful that would be. And I know that's pie in the sky, but that certainly would be wonderful. The second piece I think that would be wonderful is if our treatment plans allowed for a counselor for the family, for not just the mom, but for the kids. When I was telling my boys that I was coming to this, my oldest child, who's an English major in grad school, I said, just send me a couple things about what your experiences were and what would have been helpful. And of course he sent me a whole essay, 2 pages. So I won't read that unless anyone requests it, but the thing that he said that I think hits home for the children is that he said, though you've always been an excellent mother and I was always proud of how you handled your cancer, I think that it could have helped 14-year-old me to be sent to talk to a counselor or a therapist, where I might have been given a safe space to talk about how I felt. I was afraid to talk to you because I didn't want you to worry about me. I didn't want to talk to Dad because I still felt deeply uncomfortable talking about my feelings with my father. And I didn't talk with Corey because I felt like a big brother should appear to be unaffected or at least stoic in the face of your illness. Though I might not have been willing to go see a therapist, I think it could have helped me to talk to someone who had no stake in our family lives, as I may have felt comfortable there talking through the ways I was feeling. I think cancer is really confusing and terrifying to children, and I also think, and this is key, I also think there can be a guilt associated with feeling bad while your parent is going through a much greater deal of physical and emotional pain. Being able to talk through healthy ways of coping with these feelings would have helped me, and I think other children would be benefited if counseling services were offered to them. And that's also what Jessica said. She said that you really had to seek it out to find counseling help, and a lot of times it was not covered in the insurance plan, and it would have helped her tremendously with her family issues to have that counseling piece there without having to search for it.
I think this information sharing is really important. I think when we started this charity, the very first thing we did is we went into Genevieve's database and pulled up everything that she had, and that was the very start of our resources. So what I'm hearing from all of you, and the other thing we're hearing is that if you're sick, who wants to sit at a computer? Anyway, you might be on a chemo, you can't even focus your eyes, let alone be tired, or what's going on. So that's I think the goal is getting information, what you're trying to do to get it to the patient right away.